Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Sunday evening to you all. Hope you guys had an awesome first day of the year. Happy New Year's for folks who haven't already heard me say it in this morning's video. I got you a big update tonight talking about what's going on with this significant storm system that's beginning to get cranked up across the western U.S. It'll eventually eject itself. The surface low will move across the middle of the country, and with it will bring a chance for severe weather across the south, and then a winter storm will get cranked up tomorrow across the plains. So we're going to get detailed on both, but we're really going to spend a lot of time on the severe weather threat. We're going to take a look at the latest long-range HRRR model, kind of talk about how the storm mode will develop as far as there's going to be supercells, a big tornado threat, big damaging wind threat. What do we got going on tomorrow? We're going to get detailed on this and break down in each kind of individual areas. Of course, we're not going to get detailed on every single state in the lower 48, but we're going to zone in on these areas definitely. And then we're going to talk about the winter weather part of this towards the end of the video. I got a new mic set up, guys, and to me, if you did not see the community post, it doesn't sound any different to me, but believe it or not, to be a semi-successful YouTuber, I am not the most techie guy. So you guys got to tell me if it sounds any better. I think the volume will be a little bit lower. I think that'll be the first thing you notice, but I'm currently on the new mic. It's about, I think the one I had before was about $30. This one was 90. So it was it's definitely more money. So I certainly think it would be better, but certain people have already mentioned, hey, it depends on what software you're using. It's definitely going to sound different for the viewer. So you guys gotta let me know how it sounds. I'm certainly just gradually trying to add upgrades, but if it doesn't sound any better, I'm just gonna go back to my old one. My wife swears that the new one sounds a little bit better, but I definitely did not agree. But give me some feedback, guys. Definitely let me know how it's sounding on your end. It's definitely important because I definitely want to gradually put some upgrades into this, but for me, it just did not sound. It definitely, I'm sitting here looking at it right now. It's a flashy looking mic and looks substantially more techie than my other one. But, I had a couple people mention that I had some kind of harsh feedback on the other one, but not a lot. I haven't actually had really hardly any complaints on it, but I definitely just wanted to try to upgrade it. But let me know what you're hearing. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider subscribing. Like the video if you like it, and if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, put those in the comments below so I can pray over them and so others can too. So let's get going. If we check out the system on what's going on, this is our system right here. It's about to get going. Winter weather will begin to spread across the plains as early as tonight. And then tomorrow, we will have severe weather that gets kicked off across this portion of the south central U.S. and southern U.S. in general. And then in the middle, just plain old heavy rain. There'll be a chance for flooding. We're not going to talk much on that. Not a significant threat, but this is going to be a pretty powerful system. Definitely, obviously, the biggest system of the year, but we're only not even 24 hours into the new year. But definitely a big significant system that's going to impact millions of people to kick off our new year. So if you look at the watches and warnings, we got plenty of winter storm warnings up for the pink. This does include big cities like Minneapolis, places like that. And then you have ice storm warnings in the purple, and then winter weather advisories in kind of this purplish color that's different than this purplish color. But then you got winter storm watches for these counties on the far eastern kind of part of this event. This is kind of like in the future, or the most further away is what I'm trying to say. But you got winter storm watches up for these areas right here in Wisconsin, some counties in Minnesota. This will have a chance to get upgraded to a winter weather advisory or a warning, but we'll see what happens. You got flood watches up because not only are we going to have a severe weather threat down here for the south, we are also going to have a little bit of a flash flooding issue with this multiple rounds of storms that's going to be going over these same areas. So we'll see how that develops. But this is the big deal. The Storm Prediction Center still has this enhanced risk. It has not trended higher or more significant or anything like that. It's still an enhanced risk. I think they will keep it at this. They might introduce a very small, moderate risk somewhere in here. But for now, the storm mode looks messy, meaning I think the confidence is low on a significant outbreak or anything like that, and I'll talk about why when we take a look at the HRRR model here in a second, but it just looks like the storm mode is going to be very messy, meaning you're not going to have an area of really just solid supercells breaking out. Now, it's possible this could uptrend in the next 12 hours. But as of now, you just an enhanced risk includes bigger cities and towns like Little Rock, Shreveport, and everybody in between. There is a slight risk around this also, but Shreveport, Little Rock, Tyler, some cities down here it's mentioning in this slight risk. Definitely all this information is available for you folks too. Literally just type in Storm Prediction Center and it'll be the first thing you can click on in old Google here. But it looks like I'm going to have to go back through this. I thought I had all this pulled up, but I guess not. But here we go. This is the tornado risk here. There's a 10% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location in this yellow area. And then there's also a hatched region in this area right here in the same basically 10% area. This isn't a 10% risk added on to a 10% risk to make 20% risk. This is kind of that makes sense. So you got a 10% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of a given location. Also a 10% risk that those tornadoes could be significant, which is an EF2 or higher. Hatched area right here, it kind of reads it right here, within 25 miles of any given location. Includes those same areas that are in the enhanced risk. And then we look at the wind threat. There will be a wind threat tomorrow, and there is a 30% risk of winds pushing 50 knots or higher within 25 miles in any given location. That's 30% risk. So we're thinking that we could have some supercells that really get going, and then they're going to kind of do what they do, maybe congeal into a line, and then another additional line of storms is going to form behind that. So we'll talk about that as we go. But as far as actually how this storm's developing, we'll take a broader look at this really quickly. And what happens here, surface low starts to move into the southern central plains. And then with it, you're going to have the cold air on the northern side. And the southern side, you got severe weather ongoing down here. And we're going to obviously look at the high resolution models and actually get more detailed on how these storms can look, because this is just so in green down here where there could be severe weather ongoing. But just look at all this pink up here. A lot of ice. We'll talk about that. Blue, the snow. And then the orange you're seeing, that is sleet right in the transition zone of snow and freezing rain. So let's talk about the severe weather threat first. We'll take a look at a broader view at this really quickly, starting this off around 10 a.m. Central Time out here. And moving here in time as we're getting into about the 1 to 2 p.m. time frame, you already got storms developing in far eastern Texas. And then you got storms in southern and central Arkansas, and then storms all the way down here in Louisiana. We take it all the way out to about 4 p.m. You got some nasty storms right in the heart of Arkansas, all the way up to northern Arkansas. But look at these little small cells right into here. It's going to be hard to see, but don't worry, we're about to zoom into this area really quickly here. But I'm just showing you how this is going to develop. So it shows this first initial batch of storms, which are probably going to be the batch of storms that probably are going to have the chance to produce tornadoes. This gets going here. We watch all these cells, even getting into Memphis as we get into the kind of the late afternoon, evening hours. The surface low ejecting across the plains, starting to move into the Midwest. And then we watch an additional line of storms that develop. And these could have a risk of tornadoes too, but look at the time frame. Back that up 1 hour, it's 9 p.m. Central Time. You even got some storms into Missouri, but they're really elevated in nature, meaning you're lacking thermodynamics. So in this case, it'll probably just be some storms, but there's not going to be much of a severe element with it. But still a damaging wind threat is possible up here. But when we get down to here, we get the overlapping of the kinematics and the thermodynamics. Kinematics is that wind energy you need to really put a spin, a veering in the atmosphere to rotate these updrafts. Then it could create potentially a tornadic potential with this. And then you have the thermodynamics, which is that low-level moisture, how high are the dew points, and what are the Cape levels looking like. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But these storms are developing. I mean, it's 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and these are packing a punch too as far south as eastern Texas, and they're moving through, and then they're moving right through Memphis, Jackson potentially into the early morning hours. We'll take a closer look at this. Let's look at Louisiana first and how this could develop. And then we'll take a look at Arkansas. For you folks in Arkansas, bear with me. The next tab is you folks. But we're getting into the morning hours. Notice there's a lot of scattered convection into the morning hours. And it mentions that in the Storm Prediction Center discussion about how that could tamper down temperatures from rising too high. So there's already initially a lot of moisture going on. So is this going to be a sloppy setup? Now, that can be dangerous, but it also can be a good thing. Good thing meaning you're not going to have a lot of isolated supercells breaking out. But the bad thing is if it's messy, sometimes these tornadoes can be rain-wrapped and it's hard to see them. When you have a supercell, yeah, it's more dangerous. Probably can produce a more violent tornado, but you can see it better. So we got to see how we're going to do and how we can pick our poison here. But storms, we're getting into about lunchtime. You already got storm developing. You see these brighter colors, or vibrant colors, just use that word. The yellows, the oranges, and reds popping up here. And then as we're getting into, I would say at this point, probably the 2 p.m. time frame or so, storms in eastern Louisiana, even some storms in Arkansas. But these are going to be the ones that we watch in the far eastern counties of Texas. And then they're moving into Shreveport into the early afternoon hours, and then creating a lot of ruckus here. And then there's going to be some heavy thermodynamics down here, meaning your moisture is going to be the most richest down here. The deepest moisture is going to be down here in this sector of this moist sector right down here. Dew points are going to be well into the upper 60s and low 70s. But you're probably not going to have the best kinematics down here. You'll probably still have a nice 30 to 40 low-level jet, not low-level jet down here, but just the worst as far as a tornadic threat is likely going to be more so in northern Louisiana into Arkansas and far northeast Texas. But, don't let your guard down if you're in central and southern Louisiana, because these storms can pack a punch. And then here comes the storms behind them. And look at this. This is at this point 9-10 p.m. Look at these little hooks to these storms. So the second batch of storms could be dangerous also. These have that kidney bean look to them. That looks like they got some hooks to them. So Shreveport looks like you're dealing with some potentially for some rotating storms well after the sun goes down along the cold front. And then these are gradually congealing more into a line of storms. Once that happens, the damaging wind threat remains, but the tornado threat begins to probably decrease in this case. And then, we're getting all the way into Tuesday morning in this case. You're still dealing with some storms, but the severe level of these are probably decreasing. You look up here into Arkansas, same thing. You're dealing with a lot of scattered convection, a lot of scattered showers. But here you go. Initial first round of storms could be dangerous for Little Rock. Latest long-range HRRR model has this more of just a congealed line of storms. But watch out right in here. These little cells right here in eastern Arkansas can really be dangerous. All we can do is looking at until we get into this real-time kind of scenario, all we can really do is look at the short-range HRRR model or NAM. I always favor the HRRR model, but sometimes one or the other is more right than the other, right? So we stopped this. This is around 4 p.m. Central Time, and it just shows Arkansas under a lot of mess, but it looks really messy. You don't really have a whole lot of discrete supercells popping off. And it mentions that in the discussion of the Storm Prediction Center. It's a question in this open sector right here, because this is the open sector. The cold front's lagging back here. But in this sector right here, you're going to have rich moisture. The kinematics are going to be building as the low is firing off just northwest. And, of course, you're going to have Cape levels rising with those rising dew points. So this continues to move through, and this delivers a lot of heavy rain into, eastern Arkansas, heavy rain moving into Memphis, into western Tennessee. And this is a lot of heavy rain moving into the Mississippi Valley, Quad States regions, into, southern Illinois and southern Indiana. But then you watch this an additional round. This is along the cold front. Once you get past these, the storm threat literally disappears, and this moves through, and you got to watch these storms. At this point, it's around 9, 10, 11 p.m. So it's nighttime. You're not going to really see these coming, but these will have a chance to produce a tornado too. But, the deeper we get into the night, the more this develops more into just a line of storms. And as we get into past midnight to the wee hours of the morning, you just got a line of storms that becomes tilted in response to the placement of the low pressure. And at this point, the severe threat begins to decrease, and then then Tuesday, which we'll talk about that more tomorrow, you will have another severe weather threat across the south, but it will probably be lower as of now. It's looking that way. You look at the dew points in this region, and it's already very humid this evening across the south, the eastern Texas, Louisiana, etc. But as we're getting into tomorrow, this moist sector really begins to build. And, I'll stop it right into here. Dew points rising well into the mid to upper 60s into Arkansas. The entire state of Louisiana into the upper 60s and low 70s. All of eastern Texas, dew points well into the 60s. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you have tons of low-level moisture to aid to this severe weather threat. And that is an ingredient. That's what we call a thermodynamic. This is a huge, broad, moist sector. Huge. So you're going to have a lot of, and this is probably why you have such a messy storm mode. In fact, you click a sounding near Little Rock, and you see how the dew points are riding the temperature boundary all the way up. You don't until you get about at 200 millibars, which is way, way up in the atmosphere, you don't have really any dry air in the mid-levels, which tells me that you're going to have a really messy storm mode. Messy meaning a lot of moisture. You're not going to have any kind of cap. It's just everything's going to be firing at will, if you will. Now, this is kind of a little bit of a messy sounding here, but in general, you're going to have a messy scenario with a lot of convection. But I'm telling you, you look at mixed layer CAPE here, you're going to have a lot of CAPE that rises in response to this huge area of moist air. And here it goes. You got CAPE rising well above 1,000 joules per kilogram, even 1,500 joules per kilogram at some points. And along that line, you got to watch out, because you're going to have CAPE rising, especially in southern and southwest Arkansas, pushing 1,500 joules per kilogram. You throw that in there with also this low-level jet in place, which I'm going to show you here. And, right as we get into the afternoon hours, you got a 40 to 50 knot low-level jet. You got a lot of veering with height, southerly winds, moving more southwest as you get a little bit higher in the atmosphere. And, you got a low-level jet riding over Arkansas. It cores out over Arkansas. So you mix that in with this low-level moisture and this CAPE levels, you just basically have the classic ingredients for a severe weather threat, guys. And then the damaging wind threat develops behind it, and some of these winds will begin to mix at the surface, and you're going to have probably a damaging wind threat with this. So please be careful. I have you another update on the severe weather threat in the morning. We'll go over the same information and take a look at what the storm mode is potentially looking like. Let's talk about you guys up in the northern plains, how this winter storm could develop. And here we go. Here goes all the snow breaking out. This is around Monday midday. Snow breaking out in northern Nebraska. Northern Nebraska. You guys know what state I'm trying to say. Northern Nebraska, up here in southern South Dakota, and ice in the central areas of Nebraska right here. And then as this moisture moves, as this low pressure moves over like Missouri and the Mississippi Valley, and then getting into the Midwest, you got ice in Iowa, northern Iowa, even ice in back in Nebraska right here, especially northeast Nebraska right here, southeast South Dakota. There's going to be a pretty tight cutoff up here where you get hardly no snow, and you only have to go about 50 miles south and you get a ton of snow. And it looks like now southern Minnesota is definitely going to be under a pretty substantial winter storm. That includes Minneapolis. I think you guys are going to get several inches of snow. But once you get into northern areas of Iowa, you got a pretty stout area of warm air aloft because you're really close to this low pressure. It's going to put a warm nose of air in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which means you're going to deal with a lot of freezing rain. And this includes areas of also, like I said, northeast Nebraska. But this is going to be a substantial ice storm right here. And that's why there's ice storm warnings in these regions. And then some of this ice gets into Wisconsin too. And then there's a lot of heavy wet snow just north of that icing line. For example, right here in southwest Minnesota, a lot of snow. But then this begins to switch to snow even where it's icing in areas in Nebraska. And then this wraps up, and this could be a long duration event, but it really begins to lighten up as the core of the low pressure moves away. But, the ice is really going to get going here, I would say probably overnight, probably tomorrow evening into overnight tomorrow into Tuesday morning. So the real core of this winter storm will probably get going, I would say tomorrow morning. It's when it really cranks up and then lasts pretty much the next 36 to 48 hours. Snowfall from this, we'll look at the northern plains. Wyoming, pretty substantial winter storm for you guys, especially eastern Wyoming, but right kind of like east central Wyoming, it's going to get hit pretty good. And then northern and northeast areas of Colorado, several inches of snow, maybe as much as a half a foot of snow. And then southern South Dakota, northern Nebraska right here could get over a foot of snow, probably a foot and a half in certain areas. Could get a lot of snow in these sections. And then you look at the freezing rain totals for these same areas. We'll have to switch it back to this and then go all the way through. Freezing rain totals. A 1/4 inch of ice is possible in east central areas of Nebraska and then northeast Nebraska. And then far southeast areas of South Dakota could get a lot of ice. But really, the biggest ice threat is moving into Iowa, which I'm about to show you. But snowfall between now and Wednesday evening, in northern Wisconsin, get over a half a foot of snow is certainly possible. But Minneapolis right in here, probably 6 to maybe 8, maybe as much as 10 inches of snow could fall. And then the UP of Michigan, maybe as much as anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snow, just depending on where you are. And but really the ice, you got to watch out. You look at Iowa, and let's go on and back it up to this and look at all of that. Let's find Iowa right into here. And right here, Iowa. That is a lot of ice for northern Iowa. I mean, certain areas is predicted. This is the National Weather Service. Half an inch of ice predicted in certain areas of Iowa. Des Moines looks like you're going to stay a cold rain, but you don't have to go far enough north, and you're going to have an all-out ice storm in northern Iowa. And certainly need to take this serious in Iowa for sure. So that's all I got, guys. I'll have you an update. Let me know what the mic sounds like. I have a feeling you guys are going to say my other video sounds better, but I might be wrong. It might sound better on your end just due to your speakers. I have default speakers. So, in fact, I use the volume coming out of my monitor down here. So it just tells you how very average my setup is. So God bless all y'all. Have an update in the morning, and I'll talk to you soon. God bless.